that IPL is one factor which made people believe that one can actually make money off sports. Cricket used to make a lot of money traditionally. We've seen post winning the '83 World Cup, it's been very easy for cricket to get money, and IPL has changed that. IPL actually encouraged the private participation. And if you see, IPL success is based on a PPP model, which is very important, where public and private participate together. Of course, in sports, there is always a larger public, which is the sports players, which play a large part. And if you look at, honestly, even if you look at the Indian ecosystem, whether it is the federations, whether even it's the private players, at least one thing we've been able to establish now, and we've heard stories in the past session also, the players now are being looked after. I mean, they're getting maybe it still can be improved. Of course, everything can be improved, but we know it's much better than it was 2 years ago, very much better than it was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. So I think that part of the ecosystem is being taken care of. I think investment and ROI, I think ROI in sports is something which one cannot even talk at this stage, because it's still very nascent. And if one wants to be in sports as a business, it is, again, there are two ROIs even in sports. One is from an advertising perspective that we've seen sports has always delivered. It is always in people's mindset. We know everybody wants to back a winner. And sports is continuous. You know, every year new talent come, some retire. So it has, that ROI works. But people who are actually investing privately in sports, it's a difficult ROI, besides, of course, the IPL teams. Even in the second tier leagues, in the state premier leagues in cricket, there still is a lot to be desired. So I think ROI, Shormishta, in the first few years is not something which an industry or anybody should look at when you're investing in sports. Again, the theory is different from an advertising perspective. So it's in for the long run. Otherwise, it's not for the faint-hearted. Let me put it this way.
Yes, very instructive last words. It's for the long run, so we are not thinking of ROI here. We are thinking of the longue durée, as they say in history. We are thinking of the long run, and it's not for the faint-hearted, and I'm sure none of you ladies and gentlemen are the faint-hearted. I'll come to Andrew. Andrew, you are a keen observer of the city. You're a keen observer of sport. Now, I'm sure you will agree that while all the people here, the corporate leaders here, people who are in positions to take decisions, they are making a difference to the sports ecosystem by, giving infrastructure, giving facility, but it's just the tip of the iceberg in a country like India. And if you could contrast this to the facilities you see, for instance, in the UK or all over Europe, where, it starts from very basic. I mean, there might be a village in the UK I have friends, there's a village with 5 houses, but it will have some sporting facility, things like that. When we were in Paris to cover the Paris Olympics or Paralympics, I was doing fan engagement, and the fan zones, I mean, our team, I think, after a point got tired back home, because I was at, it was the same kind of fan zones, but it was so diverse by way of engagement, all over the city. In fact, I remember one particularly. There was a fan zone, so I was wandering off one morning, and there was a fan zone tucked away in a medieval church in the middle of all those gargoyles, and someone told me this is where a scene of the Da Vinci Code has actually been shot, and in the middle of that, kids, playing badminton, kids playing all kinds of sport. So, Andrew, I would like you to kind of juxtapose and put forward your thoughts on where you see grassroots sports infrastructure here, as opposed to, in the UK or elsewhere.
Okay. I'll do my best with that. Thank you. I mean, it's very difficult, isn't it, to compare what we have here in India, what we have in many other countries across Asia, and what we have in the UK, because, I mean, the sports, I mean, Calcutta's an exception because sport has been part of Calcutta life almost since the city evolved. It's been a huge thing and it's a huge part of the history. But for the most part, sports hasn't really been front and center, or at least the bigger sports have not been front of center. We've heard from the last speaker about the pressure on most people, their desire for their young people to make a living. And Rahul's just spoken about how that's been difficult, but in recent years, slowly, it's improving. So why is there going to be a lot of sports facilities when there isn't a demand for use? And I think even in the decade or just under a decade I've lived in India, I've seen that shift. I've seen that has improved. But you just cannot compare to what we have in the UK because the sports ecosystem was so strong then, and it continues to be such an important part of everybody's daily life. You know, today I'm wearing my Scotland rugby shirt rather than an East Bengal football shirt. Sorry, Rahul, but at least they're winning 1-0 at the moment, even though you're not there. You know, for young people in Scotland, for young people in England, when I was growing up, you just lived and breathed. You got up, you went out onto the street, you played football, you went to the field and played cricket. It was all that kind of activity. So of course the facilities had to be there. They were driven, they were demanded. Again, here in Kolkata, you have a beautiful natural resource in the Medan. They play rugby on Crowfield every Saturday, a hive of activity. People playing cricket all over the place. Sometimes, if I'm lucky, I can catch a bit of football as well. And that is there. But in many other Indian cities that haven't been planned in the way Kolkata has, it's much more difficult to carve that out. I lived in Hyderabad before. They had to put the football courts on roofs because that was the only space in which they could create. So I wouldn't really want to make a direct comparison. But there are things that can be done better. You know, in the UK, I mean, I thought your T20 World Cup was the best ever, and it broke many records on and off the field. Okay? But in terms of what you spoke about, in terms of the fan experience, etc., it wasn't great. Honestly, it could be better. Could the UK help in giving ideas of how that can be made better? Yes, it could. Just as you're giving us ideas, I'm talking about India as a whole, about how you can really raise the bar of cricket through the whole T20, because that's all driven from India, and much of the investment, including in the UK, is coming from India. So it's learning from each other. But on that point, if you go to Eden Gardens, if you go to the Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad, the place is open only when there's a big match, when there's a match on. Otherwise, it's shut, it's not in use. If you go to a cricket ground in the UK, if you go to a football ground in the UK, 365 days a year, income generating activity, community activity, bringing people together. That's the difference, and that's one of the things you need to focus on.
That's actually, Andrew, precisely where I was going with my questioning. Not that we can directly compare a UK or a Paris, direct comparisons are always odious, but that's exactly where I was going, that, what could we take which would be enabling for us. And I think we do now have that kind of spirit compared to when I was growing up, even for boys. I mean, even if you played a sport, as you talked about, Europe, where people, just get up and they start playing because they're breathing, drinking, eating football, whatever. Compared to when I was growing up, now sport is an option. I mean, parents, yes, everybody needs to make a living, but parents are actually looking at children and saying, play sport because you can make a better living there. Better living than if you became a doctor or an engineer. It's completely changed. However, it's not for all sports. It's for cricket that it has, because we have, such big stars, or so many girls now want to be a Manu Bhaker. Sania Mirza, I mean, I have a daughter, 12-year-old, and when she was in her kindergarten, there was this other girl whose father was just inspired by Sania Mirza, and she's now, training to be a tennis, a tennis player. No history in the family, nothing, and she's now looking for sponsorship. So I think it has changed in a big way. It is becoming, in spirit, but what we lack in, and again I come back to that, is infrastructure. Because again, some boys, boys in Calcutta, they breathe, eat, drink football. Calcutta boys, more than cricket. But just kicking a ball around the Maidan is not infrastructure. We need infrastructure. So there is a lot of spirit. It's in their blood. But what we are looking at from leaders like these people are to get more into, because they have done a lot, but it's still the tip of the iceberg. So that's basically, was the tenor of what I was asking. But thank you, Andrew, for your response. I'll come to Atul now. Atul, for Aegis Federal, you have Sachin as your brand ambassador. Now, when you have someone like Sachin as your brand ambassador, and he's a sporting icon, how does he make, your brand so relatable to people? Sachin as a sporting icon.
Yeah. Thanks, Sharmishta. With Sachin as our brand ambassador, and it is now the 10th year of Sachin being brand ambassador of Aegis Federal, and we started to kind of use him in the last 1.5 years only. Sachin as a brand in itself, I mean, if I look back, and Boryada and me, we go a long way back, maybe 20 years, Sachin is one person who actually created an ecosystem around himself. He's the first athlete who actually created an ecosystem which can be a long-term ecosystem. You can move your brand with Sachin. And with his progression and his Bharat Ratna and his dignity in carrying himself and staying away from controversies makes him a very, very good brand to ride your lesser known brand on. So at times it becomes very difficult to have such a big brand ambassador when the brand ambassador is bigger than the brand. So in that dilemma, we have to actually look at how do we use Sachin Tendulkar to ensure that we engage with our customers, and the promise which he brings of continuity, promise of integrity, promise, that comes into your brand values. So taking Sachin as a brand ambassador is not a small thing, money-wise also, but it is something which the brand has to live through. It is something which the brand, it puts a lot of pressure on the brand itself. When I say brand, the whole ecosystem within Aegis Federal. So if we say promises made possible, operations have to ensure that, HR has to ensure that, sales has to ensure that, and therefore when Sachin goes on stage and says, I am with you and I mean promises made possible, we live that. With Sachin, there is other things which come along, which is, he may not give you that much time, but whatever time he gives, you can use it for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Because I was watching a England versus West Indies match at Wankhede Stadium, this T20 World Cup, and suddenly there was Sachin, and we are looking at each other. That legacy stays, and that is giving a good lift to the brand. And in the last probably 4 or 5 months when we rebranded, we can see the difference when we really started to work on with Sachin and his profile. It has really moved the brand upwards, and all our scores are much higher at a lesser cost of advertising, lesser cost of going on spending on different medias.
Yes, so again, I think I come back to Rahul's point here that, there are some things that are in for the long haul, which are not, you don't view them in the moment. It's the long durée, it's the long haul. And Sachin, of course, is, he's a person who has a long history, a long legacy. And, so that's where he completely, influences and builds a sports ecosystem around himself. Now, I'd like to come to Bhavna for, no, actually, I think I'll come to Sagar first. Sagar, you've backed the Hockey League. You're very enthusiastic about sport, I know that. You back a venture like Rev Sports. You know, you've been a backer of Rev Sports from the very early days. Now tell me, what are your views about, and of course you've done the Urbana Premier League, which is, like your people in your housing society, they form teams and they play based on the IPL. Now that's something very important because it's, people playing, it's sport for all. It's not just watching sport. That's a very important part and something which Andrew touched on, that, it's community engagement. It's grassroots engagement is not only for people aspiring to play, not only children who want to become sports people, but it's for a community engagement. That's what you've done through the Urbana Premier League, for instance. Very important initiative. I wish there were more in the city, then kids wouldn't be sitting with their phones the whole day. Now, Sagar, speak to your thoughts on investing in the sports ecosystem, right from your where you live to the hockey league, which you've been a supporter of.
Just to add to that, we just sponsored the Indian handball team, which won gold last month.
Okay. Excellent.
So, and it was captained by one of my colleagues' daughter. So that was like the icing on the cake. But I think as a brand, you want to associate yourself with communities. You want to associate yourself with different causes, right? I mean, at Wow Momo, I think we've always believed that for me, my most important person in my life was my mom. So if you reverse Wow, it's mom, right? So it began with initiatives towards women's. We would, so today we have more than 2,000 employees who are women. We have transgenders who are with us. So, initially, I think 15 years back when I started, it was more about women empowerment. But I think today our women are very well empowered. I don't think we need to talk about empowerment. I think we all are on the same stage. But yeah, when it comes to sport, I think, for us, I think sport was something that we associated ourselves to. We said, I was a sportsman in school, not as great as people who went on to play for state and the country. But I think sports is something which is a great leveler, and when you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a level playing field. So sport teaches you how to, accept defeat. Sport teaches you how to convert every adversity into a challenge and, make it an advantage to your situation. So, whether it was us seeing through COVID or whether it was us seeing through different stages of the business, where, there are days when you feel like giving up, and then there are days when you are so happy that you can't sleep. So, like, मैं हमेशा ये कहता हूँ कि आपके सपने इतने बड़े होने चाहिए कि आपको सोना ना आते हैं. And I think we are blessed as entrepreneurs that we can live that larger than life. But I think associating ourselves to sports was more to do with, giving back to something which shaped you. I think I come from St. James's School in Calcutta, where extracurriculars was very well taken in my time. I think for us to go out there and play the CAB Under-19 final in Eden Gardens was something we used to look forward to. So it wasn't getting a trophy, it wasn't getting a prize money. It was about going out there and playing in Eden Gardens if you get to the finals. So I think coming from that legacy to going out there and trying and being a part of the hockey India League to supporting Rev Sports. I think I've been a big fan of the underdog. So when Boriada, I don't know whether to say unfortunately or fortunately, when there was that controversy, I think it shaped his career for the better. And when he came and spoke, I felt, everyone does cricket. We should go out there and do something for Paralympics. We should go out. Last year in your event, we announced sponsoring Payal Nag. So I think, how can you support the unsung heroes? How can you go out there and show the unsung heroes to India? Because when everyone covers cricket so much, the stories have to be told, and that's how you actually have built a very dedicated viewership. Today, when I look at any news and in shots, it's courtesy Rev Sports. Rev Sports is actually, got the credibility to, give breaking news, not just from cricket, but be the first to do it from different sports. So I think you look at the cause, you look at why you want to be associated to a particular sport or to a particular tournament or an event. So whether it's a community cricket tournament, whether it's something like a Rev Sport, or whether it's sponsoring a Olympian, it's more about giving back to the society, giving back to sport, because for me, CSR is not just social service. CSR is how do you build communities around you? How do you build a better India? I mean, today, the youth of India is the future. If people like us need to come forward and, walk the talk, and, how do we inspire others to go out there and do it? So I think being an entrepreneur coming from Calcutta, which is known, as the city of joy, which is known for its enthusiasm, which is known about the sport, I think it was only fair to, be associated with sport in whatever way, and we just want to grow and grow. I mean, we've denied being part of having our logo in the IPL jersey because we feel that's not adding real value, because for us, every store that we open is like a hoarding, it's advertising. I don't need to have a logo in a jersey. I think what more can I add value? Whether can I be a part of transformation in any way? And I think that's what Rev Sports allowed us to do. I think we were one of the first backers, and I'm glad that, like Rahul said, the product has just grown and nourished, and it's become more than wow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sagar, I will pick out two things which you said. Our women are already very empowered. Cheers to you for that. And I will pick out another point on which I will ask all my panelists, that sport is a great leveler. But is it truly? Are we giving enough attention to women's sport? But now I will come to Bhavna. Bhavna, I always enjoy speaking to you so much because of our shared passion for women's health, women's wellness, and Bhavna has done a lot of work in that field. So Bhavna, I'll ask you, as a healthcare professional, healthcare companies, how much do they need to look at sport when they are talking about healthcare? I mean, when you're, for instance, using an athlete, how enabling is it to use an athlete in the health ecosystem? How does an athlete drive the narrative of health?
Thank you, Rev Sports, for having me here. You wouldn't find my picture there because Sanjeev Navangol, our managing director, was supposed to be here on this panel. Unfortunately, he's unwell, so I represent BSV, and I'm happy I'm here because I also represent diversity on the panel.
Absolutely.
So that's my starting point for women's health and women's sports. I think as an organization, BSV has always believed that both women's health and women's sports have been very, very underrepresented in the country. And as a women's health leader, we believe it is our responsibility to ensure that most women in the country have an ecosystem where they can at least get access to good health. Some of the stats are really mind-boggling if you look at it. 1 out of every 2 men in the country get access to health. Unfortunately, 1 out of every 4 or 5 women get access to healthcare in the country. So it's been a struggle for many women, especially in rural India, to actually go to a primary health center and avail of healthcare. So while we sit and speak about different kinds of empowerment, there's still a lot of work to be done, especially in the rural healthcare ecosystem. Similar, I would believe, is the parallel to the women's sporting ecosystem as well, where there's lots of work that has been done and lots of good work, but still a lot more to be done. To your question on how important it is for athletes to be part of this healthcare and how we use that effectively. So healthcare, pharma, we are all in a very nuanced communication. We do not speak directly to consumers. There's no D2C in our country. So we speak about therapy areas, we speak about disease management, we speak about how many women, for example, even in this room, there are several women who actually suffer from PCOS, who suffer from endometriosis, but we do not speak about it. But when we have a sportswoman talk about her challenges and how she came back to her sport, even though she she had a PCOS, even though she had very heavy menstrual bleeding, in times when she had to be trained. We have a lot of these athletes come and talk about these things to our people, to our women, and there are a lot of similarities with what our products, our patients, our therapy areas deal with, and sports. And when we hear from these athletes, of course, the story of their resilience, the story of their discipline, and of course the story of how science, fitness, training, and all of that plays an important role in bringing them back to the field. So it's we believe that it's an ecosystem. We believe that there are different players who have to play their role, and as a healthcare company, we bring science to sports. And I think using athletes is one of the best reminders that these stories are real, and there are real women who have come out of these problems, and it brings a lot of credibility to our science.
Thank you, Bhavna. Yes, as with what Atul said about Sachin, when you use a woman athlete, and someone who, might be very aspirational, whose story might be very aspirational, and when they speak about such issues, which are, for a long time in our society, it's been taboo, and every year at the Trailblazers conclave, we have that panel on women's health where we just talk about menstruation, period pain, we talk about menopause, we talk about, having children at older, because for athletes, who obviously need to have children at older ages. And I think we've opened up that conversation in a big way through Trailblazers, and obviously it's very enabling, because if she could do it, if an Anju Bobby George or someone else could do it, then why can't I? I'm not the only one. Now, while we're talking about women's health, I'll come back to Rahul. Now, Rahul, a lot of investment in sport. What are your thoughts on women's sport, a league for women? Any ideas, any dreams?
Look, I think, again, in India, cricket shows the way. So I think the women's IPL is starting to gain prominence. If you look at even the women's football, if you look at football matches across the globe, you're seeing audiences now coming for women's football. And I think not only women's football, women's sports across all categories, but I think sports besides cricket also needs a huge support. And I think here, like in country like India, the government has to show the way. Although it's like keep coming back to a situation where you always look to the government, but honestly, going forward with what AI is doing, unless sports is considered as an employment generation activity in a country like India, and that focus comes from the government, the long-term support of ecosystem, growth of ecosystem, of sporting ecosystem will be very difficult. We are seeing some signs of it. This year the allocation towards sports has increased. India has huge ambitious plans of hosting the Olympics. Before that, the Commonwealth Olympics and the Youth Olympics. That will require a lot of investment in infrastructure, which is lacking. But I think what Andrew said is very critical. What about the existing infrastructure? I mean, why can't you have 100, 200 events at the Salt Lake Stadium?
Exactly.
And similarly at the Eden Gardens, or all the Maidan places where due to a lot of restrictions, a lot of bureaucracy, things are restricted. I think even in the districts when you go, you'll see that the stadiums are not accessible to everyday people. So I think besides adding new infrastructure, this policy change where invite the public, private partners to ensure that the local community, the larger community in an area also starts using the sporting facility. And I think education, starting from the beginning, the physical education part, I think is also very important. So not only women's sports, I think any sport beside cricket today needs a lot of holding hands.
And we need community involvement. That's really key. Atul, I'll come to you. in your long career, again, I know you and Boria have known each other for a very, very long time. And in that long career and your involvement with sport, how have you seen, the ecosystem changing vis-a-vis its focus on, well, Sachin always remains a star, or a Dhoni always remains a star. But have you noted any shifts in the sporting ecosystem where people are thinking differently, or what are the changes you've noticed where we have more space for women, for, para-athletes? Have you seen a shift or noted a shift?
Yes, for sure, Shomishta. In the last probably 10 years, there is a huge change in the sporting ecosystem in India, and the fact that we are in a conclave like this, where we are talking about other sports other than cricket, and so when I came into sports, I had my sports management company, and I used to proudly go to a sponsor and say, cricket is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6 sport in this country, and therefore you should invest in cricket. And I tried to go out of cricket and tried to invest in other sports, but the ROI, as you spoke initially, was not there. So if I look at then, probably 2012, 13 to now, there is a huge shift as far as cricket is concerned. Cricket has, like Rahul said, cricket has shown the way. But why cricket became successful is because cricket acknowledged sponsors.
Yeah.
Cricket acknowledged the support which cricket was getting. And now that everybody else is becoming more professional, you are now appreciating each other's effort, and therefore the ISL is successful, Kabaddi League is successful, there's a volleyball league now, there are other leagues coming up, probably there'll be athletics league which will happen. And as somebody in the first panel said, success is something which is important. Now, women's cricket, we won a World Cup. There is Neeraj Chopra. There is a 4x400 medal. There are athletes doing well, means that there are other people who want to be in that sport. And when people want to be in that sport, the sponsors follow. As a brand or as an investor in the sports ecosystem, what I will look at is, how do I get my ROI? Whether it comes today, tomorrow, or a few years later, that burn I can do, but the ROI is important. Every sport which you look at now, if you look at as a T20 World Cup in England is more successful because there are so many Indians participating. If you go and watch a one-day match or a T20 match in UK, you will find 90% Indians. India versus England, I remember Rohit Sharma telling me, just after the match, it felt as if I am playing in Eden Gardens. There are very less British than, 10% British.
Everywhere. Lords,
Wherever you go. So there is a lot of Indian participation which is there. And if I remember doing the first Olympics with Buryada, and now if I look at Olympics and I look at the people who travel to Olympics and everybody following Indian athletes, there is a huge difference. And we've come a long way. As everybody is saying, we'll need government support, we'll need a lot of support from everywhere else. But the most important thing to me is everybody has to appreciate each other's contribution and move forward. Small, big, doesn't matter at this point of time, but every other sport is picking up. We are competing with the best in every sport. The moment we have next Sachin Tendulkar in various sports, or a Sania Mirza or a Saina Nehwal, we will have these sports coming up. So that's very, very evident now. Very clearly, I can see that difference.
We do clearly look for icons because, icons make you want to emulate them. That makes the ecosystem grow. I'll come to Sagar. Sagar, you have been a champion of, working women. You have, championed their empowerment, and you were also, invested in growing the sports ecosystem. And I'm nearing the end of my panel. So if you had one wish, about getting the sports ecosystem and your your commitment towards women's empowerment together. Is there something that you wish to see in the future? Is there a dream?
So definitely, I mean, before I come to the wish and the dream, let me just add, Atul just mentioned there are many more leagues coming up. So we're also launching the Indian Momo League this IPL.
Wow.
Where it's purple color momos for KKR, so Khabo Khelbo Jeetbo Re, or a yellow color
Excellent.
momo for Chennai, which is Momo Podo, not Whistle Podu. But, but yeah, I mean, coming to your question, see, that's how you integrate sports with what you sell, right? And you try and build association with people, right? I mean, for us, that's building association with the fan base. But yeah, coming to, one particular wish, I think, see, I have one very simple wish, and I wish people who are, people who are at that level do hear that. Look at the Odisha example, how they adopted hockey.
Yeah.
And, we've seen a revival of Indian hockey. Both for men and women, right? Similarly, if every state takes up one sport, we will see more factory of medals coming in. Just like how Kota is a factory for IITians.
Yeah.
So if every state takes up one sport, you will see a factory being set up for different sports, which will see more medals coming in. We are a united country. I mean, this has to happen from a central level. So if West Bengal can take up football and say, some other state like a Goa can take up some other sport, right from athletics to karate to swimming to different sports. I think imagine, 29 states, 2-3 union territories. I think we have a long, long way to go. So I really wish both for men and women. I think it's going to benefit both. I think I look at it from lens of both men and women because I feel we have lots more to achieve apart from cricket. I think we are not even at the bottom of the pyramid. We have to reach the tip of the pyramid, and picture abhi baki hai mere dost.
Yes, I really liked what you said. Again, the stuff of dreams. But what you said that, and it struck me that, if we can have the IITs and IIMs, if we can have factories, so to speak, of academic excellence, why can we not have, create these hubs where we produce, more powerful athletes? Thought, but still the stuff of dreams. I'll come to Bhavna and then to Andrew with the same question. Any dream that you have related to, healthcare, women, sports ecosystem? Is there any dream that you would want to integrate here? Andrew, I would say the same. I would pose the same question to you. Any dream that you dream for this city, integrating these same, paradigms?
I'll go first, Andrew. Okay. So I think for us, the dream is when we start asking questions. And so far, I think the question that all of us have been asking is women's health or women's sports? And I use that interchangeably. Is that advancing? And of course, the measure is, it is. And answer is yes. But I think that our dream will actually start coming into play when we change the question and then when we ask ourselves, are the conditions for equity actually changing? I think when we start changing that question, the responses we get for the conditions, how do we change them together? Because not one person can do it, not one stakeholder can do it. It's a collaborative, collective effort that leads into changing the conditions. And I think once we start thinking about that question, once we start aligning responses to that, I think that's when a dream actually starts becoming a reality.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. My last question, Andrew.
Okay. Boria asked me here because of my reputation for watching women's football. That's something I really got into since I came to India. But the first time I ever watched a women's football match was in South London in 1981. England played Finland, women national team in a friendly. Less than 250 people in a stadium that held 66,000. Okay? Pitiful. All right? Fast forward to now, and we are seeing 60,000 plus stadiums sold out for certain women matches in the UK week on week in the women's season. It's become such a big thing. My dream is the same here. And it will come, but it will take time. And let me just point out a couple of very brief things, if I may, because I've watched a lot of women's football here. And what disappoints me, first of all, I've watched women's football, particularly in Kolkata and in Odisha. A lot of the matches kick off at 1 o'clock. In March, in September, under the burning sun, outrageous. I asked somebody at one of the clubs, why do you make them play at this time? They said, floodlights are expensive, sir.
Oh.
This is a disgrace, and this has to change. And I've come to learn since that it's more to do with the governing body than the clubs. They set the time, they set the fixtures, all of that. But the matches need to be played at a respectful time, not only for the health of the women, because you've asked about health, but also because people will come. If they play at 5 or 6 after work, they will come to the stadium, they will watch. They will not come at 1 o'clock. Many people can't come at 1 o'clock. So that is one very important thing. Second thing, East Bengal women, best team in the country at the moment, very proud of them. I've seen them rise from bottom to top in the time I've been here. They have been playing in their current league. It's taking a midway break. They're playing their matches in Kalyani. They've not played a single match in this city. It is a disgrace. I'm sorry to say again. They should be playing every match in this city where their fan base is and where people will come. How are you going to ever promote the women's game with this approach? You know, it reminds me of that 1-hour bus journey to the ground in South London to watch England and Finland women. And if you told me then that one day there'll be 60,000 people in that stadium, I wouldn't have believed you, but it happened, and it can happen here. That's my dream. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. If we sat with a cup of coffee, if I sat with my panelists, I think we could go on talking for the next hour, but I'm afraid we don't have time. Everyone had very instructive things to say. We debated, we extended the discourse, we touched on points which are not comforting, but that's the whole idea, to touch on, to not say, oh, well, how great we are doing. We have stars, we have cricketers, we have a Manu Bhaker, but to touch on the points that, that Andrew ended with. And of course, we all have a dream for the sports ecosystem, so more power to each of your dreams. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this panel.
Shormishtadi, if I can request you to stay on stage, please, for the felicitation. And may I call on stage Mr. D.B. Sundaramam, sir. Please, can we have you on stage for the felicitation? Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause. A lot of positive takeaways from the session, investing in the sports ecosystem. And may we have the gifts on stage, please, for our esteemed speakers and panelists. Shormishtadi, please join them on stage and please receive the gift as well. The applause should keep coming, ladies and gentlemen. It was an extremely informative session, an insightful session into how you invest in a sports ecosystem. Mr. D.B. Sundaramam, Vice President Corporate Services, Tata Steel, is putting the final touches to an esteemed session. Thank you so much, Pompadi. And Shormishtadi, I'll request you to be on stage for the photo op. Mr. Ramam, sir, may I request you to be on stage, please, for the photo op. Why don't you join us for the photo op? Ladies and gentlemen, a huge, huge round of applause. Investing in sports ecosystem. The second session of the Tata Steel Trailblazers Conclave 4.0, moderated articulately by Shormishtadi. And this is the official photo op. Thank you to all my panelists, to all the speakers, and to Shormishtadi as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, time for the third and final session of day one of the Tata Steel Trailblazers Conclave 4.0. So, I'll introduce this session in a mix of both English and Bengali. কারণ ফুটবলটা এমন একটা জিনিস যেটা ঠিক বাংলা ভাষায় না বললে ফিলটা আসে না। ইস্ট বেঙ্গলের গ্যালারিতে আপনি ঠিক ইংরেজিতে বোধহয় চিয়ার করেন না। ইস্ট বেঙ্গল বা মোহনবাগানের গ্যালারিতে বসে যখন আমরা প্রিয় দলের জন্য গলা ফাটাই তখন বোধহয় আমরা ঠিক ইংলিশে চিয়ার করি না। বাট this will be a hybrid session, a mixed session in English and Bangla, because the passion for football not only runs in the veins of Bengalis, but I think it runs in the veins of all Indians. And tonight, actually, we discuss the road ahead for Indian football. Not only the derby on the 3rd of May, not only Mohun Bagan, East Bengal, not only Miguel Figueroa, not only Robson Robinho, but the future, the road ahead for the Indian football. Where do we stand when it comes to FIFA rankings? Where do we stand when it comes to high pressure situations? Where are we succeeding? Where do we need to better ourselves? Taking a look at us in a constructive way, constructive criticism of the Indian football. What can we do to make things better? What can we do to translate this passion into fantastic performances on field? And we have some of the frontline people in this regard, in this field. For all of you to engage in this session, may I call on stage one by one, Mr. M. Satyanarayanan, Deputy Secretary General AIFF, Anirban Dotto, Secretary IFA, Mukul Chaudhary, CEO Jamshedpur, and Prithijit Dash, CEO Interkashi. May we have you on stage, please, and a huge, huge round of applause for my esteemed speakers and panelists. And to moderate this session, may I call on stage, perfectly fitted in a blazer, and with his charm and with his aura of Maidan, Mr. Debashish Sen. Can you join us on stage, please? The Maidan legend, Debashish Sen, who never misses a beat when it comes to football, and the principal football correspondent of Ref Sports. May I call on stage Mr. Rahul Giri to moderate this session along with Debashish Sen. So whenever it comes to football, we have to discuss football, we have to talk about football in our shows. The two people I reach out to on WhatsApp, one is Rahul. I ask him football niye kichu update ache ki rakhbo, and Debashish da, I always say Maidan ki bolche Debashish da. Whenever this man is on tour, his heart still beats for Maidan, and he promises to come back and deliver the punches from the Maidan. Ladies and gentlemen, the road ahead for Indian football. Over to you, Rahul and Debashish da.
So hi everyone, first of all, good evening to everyone present in this hall. As you all know, it has been a difficult year for Indian football. I mean, last few months, every time Indian football, has been in headline for wrong reason. I mean, from the delayed start of our top tier Indian football league due to commercial deadlock, then to the disappointing run of our national team, every time it has been lots of negatives, but in this session, we are not going to dwell on the past. We are not going to talk about what went wrong, but we will look forward. What are the positive going forward for Indian football? How you can revive the football ecosystem? How you can rebuild Indian football? And to discuss on that, we have a very distinguished panel, starting from my right, M. Satyanarayan, AIFF Deputy Secretary General, then obviously IFA Secretary Anirban Dotto, then Jamshedpur Club CEO Mukul Chaudhary, CEO of Interkashi Prithijit Dash, and obviously my colleague Debashish Sen. Firstly, I will start with Satyanarayan sir. Sir, as I have already mentioned, that last few months have been very difficult, as a Indian football fan, and going forward, I think next few years, at least 2 to 3 years, will be very crucial for Indian football. So, what are the steps AIFF is planning to take? Because already you have released the commercial tender, and I think that will be really crucial, to define the next few years for Indian football. So, what are the steps AIFF have been planning to take in the next few years?
First of all, thank you for having me here. Like you said, next 2-3 years is truly going to be a sort of a correction period. A few things have happened, and all happened in the last 1 year. The first thing being that we finally got a constitution after almost about 7 or 8 years. So that's number one. Number two, not only for football, but for all sport in the country, the new Sports Governance Act has come. And this act is putting a lot of focus on the governance. And that is one thing which has been the Achilles heel for most of the sport. Because instead of being athlete-centric, it's always been administrator-centric. And that change perhaps will happen once this Sports Governance Act gets implemented. Two things will happen. You will not have those court cases now. There are almost about 300 cases in the Supreme Court and the High Court and various courts. That will stop. So administrators will have more time to actually govern the sport rather than running to the court. That's number one. Number two, just like what Adil said and Rahul said, this Governance Act is going up to the district level. So it's going to ensure that not only at the AFF level, the National Sports Federation, the states and the districts will have to get their Governance Act together. So perhaps that is something which will happen in about 2 years' time. You know, the administration at all levels will sort of pull up its socks. The third, Indian football has got into a very new phase right now, where the All India Football Federation and the clubs have come together to organize the top leagues in the country. And this is going the way of the international big leagues like a Premiership and the German League and the Spanish League. And it's happened this year. Of course, it got delayed. No fault of AFF. Always, you know, we are being trolled, we are maligned, but we don't mind it. Football is a game where we fall, we get up, and we'll be there. We have about 65 people in Football House. We've got 36 state federations, all of them mostly headed by competent people. We organize thousands of games all over the country. And touching on what Rahul said, we've got a good, the good thing for us is almost in all the 700 plus districts football is played. But the flip side is perhaps a few in the district levels, the administrators may be letting us down, and to the lack of infrastructure. I just heard the gentleman from Britain who was speaking of games being played at 1 o'clock. The administration has no hold over it, because if you've got a grass pitch, in a week you can just play 4 games. This compared to an artificial pitch where we've got in various places, you can use it for 20 hours. So infrastructure is a problem, and this is something which going forward, hopefully with the help of the government, and here I actually would have to say thanks to, you know, big companies like Tata Steel who've been with football for such a long time, and even now in this league, the ISL, they've always stood with us. The second thing I want to touch is on women in football, and I'm very proud to state here that for the first time after 20 years, our senior women, our under 20 women, and our under 17 women have qualified for the Asia Cup finals, which means we are just 2 or 3 wins away from actually qualifying for the World Cup. So we are that close. Like Rahul said, in rugby, they're 8, they need to get to the top 2. We are in 13 in women in Asia. And we need to get into the top 6, which is just 2 wins away. Hopefully that should happen. And the amount of focus we give for women's football is tremendous. Even now, we've just put out our academy accreditation, where we have about 150 academies all over the country who are accredited to the All India Football Federation. We give extra points if they've got women administrators. We give them extra point if they've got women coaches. We give them extra point if they have a women's team. So women's football, and I'm very confident, and hopefully it could happen in the next 2 months, because the other 2 teams are still there with the chance of qualifying for the World Cup. The under 20, both have got very tough groups, but still they've been working very hard. So hopefully we'll have some good news. And again, like from 200 people, when 60,000 people came to the ground, hopefully it will also happen in India. And believe me, football is the sport to follow and to invest, because it's huge at the grassroots level. It's huge, you know, the number of people playing football. Almost every turf in every city is booked till night 1 o'clock. You have people paying and playing. Unfortunately, it's not yet happening at the place where it has to happen. Like I said, a correction period will take place, and hopefully you'll see lots of good things happening in a couple of years. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. I think it's a massive year for women's football. I mean, of course, the senior women's team, they finished bottom of the table, but still we are all proud of their fight, the character they have shown on the pitch. But still we have hopes on the rest of the 2 teams, under 17 and under 20. Obviously, for next question, over to you, Devashish.
Yeah, I have a question to Satyanarayan, sir. Sir, you spoke highly about the women's team. Yes, we still are in awe about that goal that Manisha Kalyan scored a few days back. But when you talk about the senior men's team, means is it sort of a disappointment for you? How to address the failure of the men's senior team? Means obviously not qualifying for the AFC Asian Cup. We have qualified in 2019 and 2023, but that was not the case. So how do you address the problem? Because a country's success relates to how the national team performs in world stage. And that has not been the case with the Indian football team.
I think one of the reasons is that our club football versus the Indian national team, when players, the clubs are one of the major contributors of football. They keep the players with them for almost 10 months. We only get them during the FIFA windows. So the strength of the club football and the strength of the Indian ranking are interrelated. Hopefully it should improve because our under-23 team is really, really doing very well. And maybe in the coming days we should get some good results. But don't forget that the other countries in Asia are really in a very good position as far as infrastructure is concerned. Their coaching, the money they're putting in, all the Gulf countries. And in Asia, you got the Japans, the Koreas, Australia, Uzbekistan, and the Gulf countries. So getting into the top 8 or the top 6 to try to get into the World Cup will always be a challenge. And as far as ranking is concerned, yes, everyone talks, you have gone down in ranking. But what happens is ranking is counted on the number of friendlies you play and win. And when you play friendlies, you just have those 10 days windows 3 or 4 times a year. It depends on whom you get to play because the big clubs always want to play the bigger clubs, the bigger countries because they get points. So it's a little complicated. It doesn't mean that if you are 140, you're actually 140 ranked. You could be 60. And just to give you an example, our under-23, under-17 team, we beat Iran. Iran is in the top 10. But still we are 140. And if you look at the World Cup, a 20th ranked team might never win the World Cup, okay, because that's how it is. And again, I don't want to compare it to cricket. I think most of you all know that in football, the number of countries who are affiliated to FIFA are more than the number of countries who are affiliated with the United Nations. So more than 200 countries play football. And trying to get to the top is difficult, but we will get there one day. Thank you.
Interesting point made by Satyanarayan sir. But we should also talk about our Indian football league, domestic football, because obviously league structure is the backbone of your national team, and of course big positive has been Mohun Bagan, their convincing run in the league football. But obviously we have got another success story, that is obviously Inter Kashi, a club from a state of Uttar Pradesh, a state which produced very few talents who went on to represent the national team. But Inter Kashi, they are dreaming of creating something big in the future. So obviously we have Prithijit Das, CEO of Inter Kashi. So what's the roadmap of this club to promote football in a state like Uttar Pradesh? We have seen, I think, 2 or 3 footballers who went on to represent the national team. So what's your roadmap with Uttar Pradesh football?
First of all, thank you to Rev Sports for inviting us and having us here in this panel. And also thank you to All Indian Football Federation, because it's only through them that we've been able to build a club. It's crazy when you think of Uttar Pradesh, 3% of the world's population, and we are the first professional football club out of there. I feel the opportunity is huge. There is so much one can do. In terms of population, is probably the size of Brazil. That is what attracted us. We were very fortunate that in 2 years of the club, we could win the I-League. Now we are playing in the ISL. And like everyone says that nothing's better than success. So we feel now that we're in the top tier, we can convince more corporates, more people to start investing in football in Uttar Pradesh, because the only way the ecosystem can grow is, I don't know, if you have 100, 200, 500 clubs in the state, that will essentially build the ecosystem, which will essentially bring out the players, and then we would have played a small part in this whole revolution of football in Uttar Pradesh.
Devashis,
Yeah. If I may ask Mukulda, means obviously You happen to be involved with an I-League club as well before joining Jamshedpur SC as the CEO. Having seen Mumbai SC, with whom you were associated with as a CEO, and now to be involved in an ISL club, what do you find the difference between an ISL club and I-League club? Do you see a drastic difference in approach and the quality, the infrastructure, and what is that one thing that needs to be improved when you talk about Indian football?
Thanks for that question. The biggest drastic difference is the expenditure. So when you're an I-League club, you spend almost 1/6 the amount, and not that the quality is 1/6. What ISL did, typically is what most important was infrastructure. What one has seen in last 10 years happen in Indian football, what Andrew was just mentioning about infrastructure, I-League games used to be played at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the same reasons. And this was Premier League of India once upon a time. And a similar thing in Bombay, we had 22 players on the ground and we had less than 5 on the stadium. So worse than what you had seen in terms of 250. So from that to what ISL has managed to do today, wherein getting audiences to the stadium, I think that's a fantastic run. And thanks to All India Football Federation and all the clubs involved, the quality and overall display has been fantastic. But having said that, yes, we will always judge by the ranking of the Indian national team, and I think there is some work a lot of work needs to be done in that direction, and it should be done. But the major difference that I see is the overall, also the glamour quotient. I think when we were in I-League, of course, there were prominent names, and it was as sought after, but I think it's gone to a different level when it comes to glamour quotient as far as ISL is concerned.
Absolutely, a lot of differences between I-League and ISL. The big thing, that is the professionalism. I've seen a lot of professionalism in ISL. Footballers with a strict diet, and also there have been a lot of modern day infrastructure as well. But one difference that we have seen over the past few years in the national team, obviously decline in the number of Bengali footballers that we have noticed, and for that brings me to my next question to obviously IFA Secretary Anirban Dotto. At least if we go 5 or 6 years ago, there used to be 3 or 4 Bengali footballers in the Indian national team. But now if you see, sometimes there is Subhashish Bose, or sometimes we don't even see his name as well in the squad. So the decline that we have seen in number of Bengal footballers in the national team, what's actually going wrong, do you think?
Well, to be very frank, the first step for change is accepting reality. We have all known Bengal or Kolkata as the cradle of Indian football. We have all known Calcutta as the Mecca of Indian football. And we were living in a state of complacency. So what happens when you reach a state of complacency, you don't really work because you are happy with the existing whatever is happening. And I feel pre-COVID, we were in a state where we believed that we are the number one and we don't need to work for it. We are the biggest name in Indian football. So as I told you, that the first thing is to accept, and then only you can set forward change, And what has happened we have completely neglected in the past few years, or past quite a few years, the youth. We have not worked towards youth development. If you look at Bengal now, our major investment is in youth football. We have the nursery league up and going now. We have converted or transformed the Calcutta Football League completely into age group leagues. We have brought in state youth league. So there is now a lot of young players. We have a lot of opportunity for the young players to play and exhibit their talent and improve themselves. What an association can do is give opportunity to the players to play. We have focused a lot. We are trying to develop as many coaches as possible because football is a science. We have to understand that. Coaching is not about running around the player, making players running around the field. So you have to understand what they need and apply the science accordingly so that they can develop to become better players. And we have been focusing on coaches development. We have been focusing on youth development, and I think there are around 2,500 youth matches happening in Bengal right now, which is not a small number. And I am certain that in the coming times, you will see that there are a lot of players playing for the India or playing for the ISL teams. Even if we talk about ISL, you have mentioned a name, I'll say, who is the most favorite team in ISL right now for championship? It is Mohun Bagan, right? And it is captained by Shubhashish Bose. Exactly. So that's a Bengali. We have quite a few Bengali players playing in the ISL teams, and I'll not be able to answer this why they are not in the national team, because it depends on the coach. It depends on the choice of the coach, and every coach has his own mindset and his own vision about the team, and they select players accordingly. If you look at Bengal players, you will find players more dependent on skills rather than physical agility and physical abilities. Whereas football has moved a pace ahead, and now it is more of a physical game. So your height, your fitness, your strength matters. And yes, Bengal used to dominate Indian football, but you have to keep in mind that when Bengal used to dominate Indian football, there was no football in the rest of the country. That is when we dominated Indian football. Now there has been development of the sport in all the states. Most of the states, they are coming up. Like Northeast, they have evolved as a powerhouse of Indian football. They are producing so many players. So you cannot ignore them. You cannot deny their presence in the game. So obviously players will come from other regions of the country as well, because they are also focusing on the development of the game. But I'm sure Bengal will keep dominating.
Were small in size. That is the story which has hit the headlines not only in India but the world. But everyone forgot that within 7 hours, we replaced them with top-class Macron kits. And the girls, when they played, they had the best kits on. It is not in our hands that the manufacturer has made a mistake in the sizes. I mean, for someone who's prepared a team for 2 years, sent them on multiple trips, got them a World Cup coach, it is not for us to intentionally ensure that they get smaller kits. We don't gain anything. Of course, we stopped the payment, we ordered an inquiry. But the narrative was that AFF is the culprit. It's not. I mean, someone has made a mistake. We all buy clothes. So many times we send it back for alteration. It happened. And I'm thankful to Rev Sport, because at least they got me on a show and they asked me and we could answer it. A lot of people write and there's utter nonsense, you know. People have written that the girls themselves went and did shopping. We got the news at 9:30. 10 o'clock, my manager, my security officer and one more person, all three were out in the market. And in 7 hours, they not only sourced the kits, they got it printed, and the next day it was passed, and they played with the new kits. But this is not there, which is out in the media, and we can't go around, you know, we've got other work to do in the federation, and we are working hard. And believe me, results will come. For the first time, we have 4 teams which have qualified for the Asian Cup. We've got a new scouting department. The number of academies is about 150. The number of competitions have increased, and the incompetent AFF has stepped in and is organizing the biggest event in India, which is the Indian Super League. And everyone, you know, all the naysayers said football is gone for this year. But we started not only the ISL, we also started the I-League. So believe me, just trust in us, be a little patient. In a few years' time, this game is going to turn around. Even today, when 2 clubs play, you get a crowd of 60,000. It doesn't happen in any other game. And that is the strength of Indian football, and that is what keeps us going. All the people involved in football, including people like me, I've been a journalist for 30 years, straight into administration because I love football. Each one of them who are in football are there only because of the passion. No one is making money. None of the corporates, even like Jamshedpur, are putting money to make money. Everyone is at a loss. But it is only the passion which drives this game in our country. And one fine day we will also get there where all those who have invested will get their dividends. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think despite this all off-field controversy, the girls have shown us that there's not much difference between India and teams like Vietnam and Chinese Taipei. If things go well in the coming 3 to 4 years, I think they can bridge the gap as well. But very interesting point made by Anirbanda, that is corporate investment. Without corporate investment, it's really challenging, to sustain in football, whether it's club or academy. And that brings me to my next question. Obviously, I will start with Prithijit Da. How important, is corporate investment in football? Because during the uncertainty surrounding the ISL, we have seen a lot of clubs, struggling financially. They were forcing the players, they were requesting the players to take pay cut, they were reducing their budget. So how important is corporate investment in football? How difficult to convince, corporate investors? And also, what are the things do you think that Indian football need to prioritize to bring in more corporate investment?
I feel the only way to grow football is corporate investment. Nobody's making money in football. But to bring corporate investment, to keep corporate investment, to us the most important is the governance. What Interkashi faced for a very long period and the large money we've had to spend made us discuss multiple times internally whether it is worth keeping the club or shutting down the club. Even till recently, in December, we've had very serious discussions internally to shut down the club because we feel that the governance was a big issue. If we hadn't been bold enough, and if the club chairman wasn't that aggressive that we must fight for our rights and we must go to CAS, and we had to go to CAS for not one but for 2 cases, today we wouldn't be playing in ISL. Another team who wasn't the real winner would be playing in ISL. We won on the pitch. We were made names and people told us that you won in CAS code. But what people don't talk about is we actually won on the pitch. CAS reaffirmed what we did. CAS said that you were right and what happened to you was wrong. So I feel this whole thing could have been avoided. We as a club spent about 4.5 crores legal cost, which in today's day in football is a lot of money, which could have been used in grassroots and academies in so many better ways. The federation has also spent crores of money. I just feel that if we can get the governance correct, things will be better and people will start investing. It's not that people don't like football. Everyone wants to invest in football. They are just very concerned about their protection. Because any corporate who wants to come in, they are going to come in for the love of the game. They are not going to come in for the money. And for them to come in for the love of the game, they have to be 1000% sure that everything will happen in a planned way, in a sustainable way, and in a transparent way. If that can be shown consistently, not 3 months, 6 months, but like for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, I am sure like a lot of corporates will come in and a lot of money will come in football. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Same question for Mr. Chaudhary as well, because I think Jamshedpur is the only club in Indian Super League with their own facilities and with a big corporate backing like Tata Steel. How important is corporate investment, and what are the things do you think club need to prioritize or governing council need to prioritize to bring in more corporate investment?
So I'll just add on to what Pratyajit had mentioned. Yes, first of all, we are really lucky and blessed to have our own facilities, and Tata Steel has built these facilities long back, and many of the clubs don't have that kind of facilities. Every other club has to rent the government stadiums. That leads to availability issues and many other issues in terms of controlling how the pitch is maintained and many other things. So that way we are lucky and blessed. Corporate investments, yes, of course. I think it's a collective effort. If I sit back and we think that it would be the government that would do, or Sports Authority of India would do it, or some state government would come forth and they should do it, it may happen, but it will happen in its own pace. So we should think as to what I can do for the sport and otherwise, and that's how I think most of the corporates, thankfully, all Pratyajit, ourselves and Reliance and many more, JSW, and there's so many more who are doing it. I think it just shows patriotism in our own way, where we are supporting sports. And Tata's, as you know, we have a legacy of promoting and engaging in sports for over 100 years, and this is something that we will continue.
Absolutely. Deveshita.
If I may ask both Anirbanda and Satya sir, obviously Bengal Super League showed the way, Means they staged the inaugural season last season, and it was a beautiful run league. Is it the way forward when it comes to having such kind of state leagues? Means obviously you have your own league, Kolkata Football League, but it is the Bengal Super League that has created more eyeballs. Means, so is it the way forward when it comes to popularizing and taking footballs to different corners of the state?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that BSL is the missing link between the rest of Bengal and Calcutta. There are tiers of tournament, and if I have to place BSL, it is below Calcutta Football League Premier Division. But then again, it is a tournament that will give opportunity to the district players. So it will be easier for the clubs to scout players from the districts of Bengal. And once they get the limelight, it would be easier for them to move to Calcutta Football League. And from Calcutta Football League, they can go on with their journey for I-League and ISL and those. Yes, BSL is very, very important because, it is an important cog in the system. And if it's not there, then the entire machinery shuts down. So we have failed the requirement because even if you look at Calcutta Football League, you will see most of the players playing in Calcutta Football League are from the neighboring districts. So we needed to extend our reach to the districts far off, and with BSL we have been able to achieve that. We are very hopeful by next season there will be more players coming up, and we'll be reaching out to a larger number of spectators, larger number of players, larger number of sponsors, and a bigger investment, which will overall help Bengal football to grow.
Yeah, just to add to that, what these leagues are doing is, like, you got a Bengal league, in Kerala you got a Super League, Gujarat has started one, Northeast is planning one. What happens is, normally like in England and every place, even a young player plays about 40 games a year. In India, most of the state leagues, they play 10, 15, and then it's over for them. Maybe if they play for the state, they get 2-3 games. Now with such leagues, they play more number of games. Even in our youth league, this is what we are trying to do, is trying to give them at least about 30, 35 games. I don't know how many in this room know that last year we did 90 Asmita leagues, where each league, it's for girls, under 13, under 15, under 17. Each league had 8 teams. They played each other twice. So at 13, we had girls kicking football for the first time in an organized manner, and we had about 30 in each category. So they play there. Then we have the under 14, which is our state sub-junior. We have our under 16. So throughout, we are just ensuring from those 5 games and no games, they're at least getting about 15, 20 games now. Going forward, maybe in a few years, we'll reach that 30, 40 average. Same with, when someone like West Bengal does another event, you have players getting another chance to play another 7, 8 leagues. So that's the only way you give them more games. Like, for example, a Manchester City player plays almost 40, they play 38 games in their own league, then they play in the cup, then they play in the Champions League. That's almost a game a week. We hardly, if you take around the country, our average is not even 10 or 15. So we got a long way to go to try and reach that 30, 35, and leagues like this. That's why I said, I also touched on governance. Once this Sports Governance Act is implemented, and most of the states and the districts get their act together, you'll see more leagues being organized all over the country. And hopefully that's when the players will get opportunities to play more games.
In fact, I missed out what Satyaji has rightly mentioned, that with BSL, we have been able to expand the football calendar of Bengal. So it is additional 2 months of employability for the players. It is additional 2 months of game time for the players, which aids them to develop themselves, which to a certain extent helps them to get a financial security for another 2 months. And the idea behind everything is, ultimately we aim for a 12-month calendar for Indian football, which is Right now, somewhere around 6-7 months. So rather Bengal football. So if we can extend a few more months, then we can create round the year employability for the players and round the year game time for the players as well.
Okay, last few minutes and our final round of question. I will start with Satyanarayan sir only. Sir, let's talk about national team a bit. We are already out of the AFC Asian Cup, and keeping on mind in 2036, most likely we are going to take part in the Olympic. As a host nation, Indian football team might also take part. But as you see that our neighboring countries all are relying on OCI or PIO players. So what's your plan regarding bringing more OCI or PIO players? Do you think that's the only option right now for the national team?
No, I don't think that's the only option, but what gives us hope is right now we've got 2 AFF FIFA academies, one in Bhubaneswar, one in Hyderabad. Our under-17 team has qualified for the 4th time. Again, they are just 2-3 wins away from going into the World Cup on merit. Our under-23 team is doing very well. So hopefully in the next 3 or 4 years, these boys will all come into the national level. But speaking about OCIs, it's the central act. And we can't tell the government what to do whenever the government thinks it's right. The only problem is in a FIFA event, the day you play for your country, on that day you must have your Indian passport. So right now we don't have dual passports. So whenever the government thinks it's fit, they've already brought into the act that they are calling all our OCIs who have Indian passports. So already we had Ryan who has converted from a Spanish passport to an Indian passport. A lot of others are showing interest. That is another reason why we are not doing well in the region, because in Afghanistan, almost all the players play in Europe. They've never been in Afghanistan, but they're playing for the country. Same with Syria. Same with even Sri Lanka. They've started getting their expats, who are outside the not OCIs, they're overseas players. And in India, we've got quite a lot of Indians who are playing in 2nd, 3rd divisions in Europe. And I'm sure if they come and can play for the country, straight away you're there in the top 10 of Asia. So hopefully if the government takes that decision, that's not in our hands. But the president has made a very strong plea for that. And I just have to tell Mukul that the current president of AFF, Mr. Kalyan Chobe, is also a product of the Tata Academy. He started from there and then he went on to play for the country. So on that note, yes, there is a lot of hope for us. Don't, just stay with us. We will definitely deliver. And the administration will also get better. We've got a lot to do, but we are there and we are working very hard.
I have a question for Pritijita. Pritijita, obviously, talking about Interkashi, you had a vision. Means obviously, and one of your goals was to play in the ISL, which you are now. But you have already started an academy. It's the homegrown players which will mean a success for Interkashi. So I'm told that you also have an academy now where you house 100 residential kids, boys. So what exactly are the plans for Interkashi in the long run?
Thank you. We have an academy. The whole idea is we are starting a football club from scratch. So we don't have fans. We need to build fan base. We have to build the football culture. We have to do everything. And the easiest way and the smartest way and the most sustainable way is to do it by academy, grassroots, have inter-school football tournament, have local matches, get kids to play and get them hooked to the game. So we right now have 100 people, 100 kids, boys residential academy. We have 60 girls non-residential academy. The idea is to grow the football across UP for us. Uttar Pradesh is our universe, so we want to set up another 4 or 5 academies in the state with a view similar to what was talking about. If India does win the 2036 Olympics, it essentially, football in Olympics is essentially under 23 game. You only have a few senior players, but it's mostly under 23. So I feel if you start on grassroots today, there is a really good chance if you can build up an ecosystem in 10 years from now, you might have 2, 3, 4 kids from Uttar Pradesh wearing the national team, playing in India, representing the country and playing the Olympics. So I think that is our vision, that is what we want to do. We have a plan where 2030 we want to have 30% of our senior team with UP kids. 2036 we want to have 100% of our team with local boys, because that's the only way we feel we can build a culture, we can get fans, we can get people to the stadium, and which will then give us the financial sustainability, because UP also as a state has, I don't know, billions of dollars as a GDP. So we're just looking internally to get sponsors, to get activations, to do everything within the ecosystem. And I feel if everyone does that, football can really grow in India.
Absolutely, interesting point made by Prithijit Dash. And one of the best thing about Interkashi, they're also planning to build, a modern facility stadium in the state of UP. So we are really looking forward to it. My next question, obviously for Mukul sir and then Anirba Da as well. Same question. Where do you see Indian football when we meet, after 5 years?
I only see it growing and getting better, because I think where we are could be the lowest point possibly, because I think 141st rank is not the rank that we would have ever imagined, but at the same time it has its own reason. Having said that, I think it's only going to get better. Looking at the women's football particularly, I think there's tremendous change that one has seen, and thanks to everybody, all the stakeholders who have contributed to that, I think we'll only get better.
Anirbandha?
Well, as Mukulji rightly mentioned, that we have seen the lowest for Indian football, and when things get tough, the tough gets going, right? So I'm very hopeful that it is only going to be better from now on, and we'll see changes and we'll see improvements in Indian football, and it is a sport for the mass, supported by the mass. You have been mentioning that there has been a lot of hue and cry because football was in such turbulence. But that also goes on to show that how much people care about the game. And that is what matters, And Prithijit, one for you. I believe that Interkashi is a club from Uttar Pradesh, which has been nurtured by Bengal football. So do your academies, do your team, but there should be at least a 30% quota for Bengal in your team and your academies.
Great comment made by Anirbandha. My last question I will end with Mr. Satyanarayan. This year we have Asian Games, and government already made it mandatory that they will take athletes who have better chance of winning medal. But what about our men's under 23 team? Do you see them taking part in the Asian Games like last edition?
We've already made a request. You know what the government rule is. You have to be in the top 8 of your sport if you have to go. The second problem which we face is a football team has to go with about 30 people. But any other sport, 1, 2 can go. So the odds are against us, but the government knows how popular the game is, and our under 23, we just lost by a whisker, and we didn't have our full strength. Some of the players were not there in the team. So hopefully, if we get a chance, they will do well. And the question which you asked them, I'd like to answer on behalf of AFF. I think 5 years from now, surely we would have had at least one of the girls' team having qualified for the World Cup on merit. That is almost, it should get done. And for us in the men's team, not more about the ranking, but at least if we get 5 or 10 players from India playing in leagues outside the country, I think that will be a huge success for us. And then let's see, from there we can take it on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Very interesting panel. A lot of insight from all of our speakers. Thanks a lot to all of them for giving us their valuable time. And this session, showed us that lot of positive going ahead. If administrator, clubs, the whole football fraternity can work together, I think obviously there's a way ahead for Indian football. Hopefully, next year when we will meet again, hopefully we can talk about the growth, the progress of Indian football. And also thanks to all of our audience for being part of this discussion.
Thank you, everyone. Please, a round of applause for Prithijit Dash, Mukul Chaudhary, Anirban, and of course, Satyanarayan. Can we have the felicitations, please? And to do the honors, Andrew, this is not a women's football panel, but you should still come and do the honors. Andrew Fleming, ladies and gentlemen, to do the honors for this particular panel.
বলবেন? হ্যাঁ একদম সত্য, চিন্তা করছিস কেন, অনেক সময় আছে। Thank you, Pompa. Can we have a photograph together, all of you, please? Yeah, there you go. This is another one. Anyone who knows Andrew will know that this will happen. This will happen. Thank you very much. I have to say it's been a spectacular start to the Tata Steel Trailblazers conclave, and Monday by 12 noon all of us will disappear. I've got 700 requests for a 300 hall. Gautam Gambhir, first time after the World Cup. Mine name passes. Thank you very much. Shormishta, please, final announcement.
Yes, so thank you everyone for attending. We have high tea just behind these boards. Kindly collect your wristband for the high tea. Everyone, kindly collect your wristband.
And anyone who knows me, you know, this menu has been handpicked, so try it out. Me and food, we go hand in hand. I mean, Bangali, pleasantly plump. Please have the food. Thank you very much and have the high tea. Great day.